Thank you very much, Program Director. Good morning, colleagues. Just to check, are there any students here? Let me see. Wonderful, give yourselves. Thank you very much. And we are grateful that you have attended this event. Thank you very much. At least you know that the Faculty of Law is doing something for you. Today we have been visited by the human rights to speak on issues that affect education and the youth. So my opening basically will not be long. I'll just be short and sweet. Firstly, I'm not here by myself. Somebody will do the introduction, but I'll just touch on a few colleagues. Myself, my name is Simphiwe Bidi. I'm the acting Deputy Dean in the Faculty of Law. I'm accompanied by a few members of the management, Advocate Seti, HOD for private law, Dr. Shaik Peremanov, HOD for Mercantile Law, Ms. Mbolambi, HOD for Public and Constitutional Law. We also have got the Director for our Human Rights Chair, that is your O.R. Tambo Chair of Human Rights, Professor Puko. We also have our faculty manager who loves smiling a lot. So whenever you visit her office, you'll find her smiling. All right. Thank you very much for that. Just a warm welcome to our visitors, Professor Madlingozi, who basically will present the guest lecture. I'm sorry, I didn't catch. You're fine. All right, sure. Thank you. All right, thank you. We welcome the Human Rights Commission, our guests. We appreciate the collaborative and the partnership that we have established with them as the Faculty of Law, as well as the University of Fort Hare. We remain hopeful that it will bear fruit for both parties, and especially for you, our students, who basically are our clients. Our society depends on such discourse to stimulate its thinking with what is basically happening socially and otherwise. We are therefore happy to be hosting the Human Rights Commission, and we hope for a wonderful event. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's fine. Can I take it off? All right. Good afternoon, almost, everyone. My name is Eileen. I'm from the South African Human Rights Commission here in the province. And it is such a pleasure to be here with the students today, because we have a memorandum of understanding with your university, and we always get to engage with, the academics and the adults and the big discussions around roundtables. But actually what we want to do is we want to speak to you guys. Because, there's a saying that the youth is the future. But we are very, very clear on the youth is the now. And we need to be engaging with the youth on a very regular basis to inform these discussions for us, because we need to be moving forward. There's a saying, I think it's Malcolm X, that says, the future belongs to those who prepare for it today. And from the Human Rights Commission side, I'm saying thank you so much for Fort Hare. They've been a valued partner for us in the advocacy for human rights and the realization for human rights, even before we had our MOU. But now we formalized this relationship and we are very thankful for that. Mine is very quick this morning. I'm introducing to you Professor Tsepo Madlingozi. He is a National Commissioner for the South African Human Rights Commission with a focus area on basic education. And he is on his inaugural visit to the Eastern Cape. And when we invited him and he indicated he's going to be coming to the Eastern Cape, we said, well, then you need to visit one of our key partners here. You need to visit the students of Fort Hare. So I am welcoming my prof, my commissioner, and I'm going to hand over to him. We have been informed about some flight details, but Prof is here, he's in your hands, but I will be taking the Q&A later as well. So Prof, if I can hand over to you for the guest lecture today on digital literacy and the right to basic education. We are very thankful for you to be in the Eastern Cape and sharing your knowledge here. Thanks so much.
Good morning. It's such a pleasure to be here at Fort Hare. Good morning to the Deputy Dean, Professor Bidi, HODs, Faculty Manager. I would also want to say thank you to Ntando. Good morning. Good morning to my former president, Professor Pogo. We come a long, long way, long way. He's pretending now that he doesn't know me. I must also congratulate him on his appointment as the OR Tambo Chair on Human Rights. Congratulations. I must also greet the Dean in absentia, the Vice Chancellor. You guys are so lucky to have the Vice Chancellor that you have. Such a great professor and such a great manager. So, please pass my greeting on to the Vice Chancellor in absentia. I would also want to thank our Provincial Manager, Dr. Carter, and the team for organizing this lecture, collaborating with Fort Hare University. The partnerships that we have with universities are very, very important. Maybe I'll come back to that later on. So there's a start of formalizing that relationship, and we hope to continue with this relationship. So we don't have much time, but I will deliver a few remarks and then we'll take questions and answers. The pitch, Professor, is not to you guys. The pitch is to the students. So if I don't use my normal concepts, epistemology, ontology, just know that is because for the purpose of this guest lecture, we really want to have a conversation with the students. So the topic for today, colleagues, is on digital literacy and the right to education. Of course, the right to education is very, very critical for a developing, is it post-apartheid? Okay, let's say post-apartheid country like South Africa. But of course, colleagues, merely saying education must be accessible is not enough in a country with such historical backlog. So, let me give you an anecdote, a very fresh anecdote. Yesterday, the Provincial Office of the Human Rights Commission invited me to join them on a campaign on scholar transport. So we went to Middlesdrift near Alice, where we walked from 6 o'clock in the morning with about just under 100 learners. And the walk took us over an hour just to get to school, over an hour. Now, you can imagine children as young as 7, 8, 9, walking for more than an hour. I mean, I was exhausted after that hour, and I was wearing comfortable shoes. These kids get raped on the way to school. They get robbed. If it's raining, if it's cold, they are walking for more than an hour. right? So merely saying we must have access to education cannot be enough for children living with disabilities, children that have to walk for such long distances. Of course, we also know that we have challenges where learner support material, learner student teacher support material is often delivered very late. And then you've got schools with limited resources. So our proposition, colleagues, is that we need a complementary system of education, which is, digital literacy. Digital literacy. How do we enhance the right to education, access to education via digital literacy? A system that will amplify access to education, but also ensuring that our kids are able to compete in this so-called fourth industrial revolution. We should not be scared of the fourth industrial revolution. Of course, we know issues of digital apartheid or digital colonization that must be conquered, but the fourth industrial revolution is here. Issues of AI, robotics, artificial intelligence, and so forth. So how do we make sure that our kids are able to compete, with kids from other places? Section 29 is the right to education. And it's very, very important for me to quote the section. It says, everyone has the right to basic education. Everyone has the right to basic education. Close quote. The architects of our Constitution did not envisage this clause to be mere rhetoric. It embodies a commitment to the transformation of our society, because of course we know that education is a catalyst for both individual and collective empowerment, right? Therefore, the right to basic education should not be understood as a privilege. It is an entitlement and it's a right, and moreover, it must be quality, accessible, decolonized education. Okay? So, this is a proposition. How do we enhance the right to education using digital literacy? And by digital literacy, colleagues, I mean the ability to navigate, comprehend, and critically engage with the emerging digital world, so that it can be the linchpin for the right to education. Digital literacy, which is the ability to navigate, comprehend, and critically engage with the digital world. The evolving landscape where information is on our fingertips, where technological interface permeates every facet of our society. Digital literacy, colleagues, is not a mere skill. It has become a necessity. It has become a necessity. And digital literacy should be understood as encompassing a spectrum of competencies, ranging from access to information online to critically evaluating such information. So the ability to access information online, but also to understand how to use and engage with such information, such content. In the context of basic education, this proficiency becomes a conduit for enhanced learning experience, ensuring that students are not merely consumers of information via TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, or X, and so forth. So they're not merely consumers of information, but they're active participants in a digitally interconnected world. So that's what this literacy encompasses: access, comprehension, but also ability to participate in this world. So for us as a Human Rights Commission, as you know, our mandate is to promote, protect, and monitor the implementation of human rights. And therefore, one of the key challenges is to make sure that we bridge the inequalities in access to education. And the Commission, in this regard, has invested in the protection of basic education. That's why with the new cohort of national commissioners, and I'm one of 8 commissioners, and my focal area is not just anti-racism and justice, but they've also added education, so that there's a focal area commissioner on these issues. We have an MOU with universities, I think about 18 universities now. I don't know what is the number, but we've got MOUs with different universities, including Fort here. In 2021, we entered into an MOU with UCT Online School. As part of that MOU, we sought to empower 14 girl children in the most remote areas of the country. This project with the UCT Online School was able to amplify access to 14 children in KwaZulu-Natal, 14 girl children in KwaZulu-Natal, making sure that they are able to surmount the barriers to education. So that's one effort that we did. So we don't just monitor violations of human rights. We also seek to be proactive in ensuring access to human rights. So this MOU with UCT Online, which was really a pilot project with 14 girl children in KwaZulu-Natal, was but one example. Here in the Eastern Cape, last year in 2023, we conducted a study in respect of access to digital tools, and I must congratulate Dr. Carter and the team for this study, which is a study that we'll also use nationally, that we'll try to replicate nationally. So this study sought to assess the access to digital tools and digital literacy. A sample study was done in quintile 1 to 3 schools here in Eastern Cape. The primary aim, as I said, being to gauge the efficacy of the Eastern Cape Department of Education in fostering an environment that is conducive to digital literacy. This exercise, colleagues, of course, coming from the back of COVID, aimed at, looking at how we can not only ensure access to education, but how do we predict when the next pandemic hits us, so that we don't sit with what we are sitting now, which, when we see different studies show us that kids who, 81% of children cannot read for meaning up to the age of 10. 81% of kids cannot read for meaning, kids who are up to the age of 10. And we can say, that is the impact of COVID. So this was a study to look at these issues. The findings underscore a consistent challenge faced by most schools in the province, which is the issue that we all know, colleagues, the challenge of access to computer labs, computer laboratories. But it also included issues like dilapidated buildings, inadequate infrastructure. Sometimes promises are made but are not fulfilled. In areas like Nelson Mandela Bay, where many schools are situated on farms, it becomes very, very difficult to construct modern buildings on, private property, because farmers say, this is my private property, the school that we have there, that's it. They don't want to allow us to work together to improve those schools. So the challenge, particularly with farm schools in Nelson Cape. In the Amatole East District, there the findings, we found lack of coordination within the computer science curriculum and the discipline of computer science. It is there on paper, but there is not enough coordination. In OR Tambo Inland, where there are some computer labs, but students or learners face disruptions because of difficulties with Wi-Fi access. So sometimes you have good schools, you've got computer labs, but there are challenges with accessing, Wi-Fi. And we know the struggle with the cost of data. So our snapshot colleagues further brought attention to the absence of coding and computer science as learning areas in sample schools, where these subjects don't simply exist, coding and computer science. On the other hand, you've got problems with, or challenges with educators, where educators themselves are not equipped or trained enough to transmit these skills. Lastly, issues of theft and vandalism, big problems in our communities. The Department of Education might invest in a school, partnership with private business, computers are installed, but then rampant theft and vandalism. And that is all our responsibility, colleagues, because we live in those communities. In Gauteng, during COVID, about 60% of schools in Soweto were vandalized. 60%. That is treason. 60% of schools being vandalized. So the evident lack of digital literacy and access to infrastructure among schools not only hampers internet access, but it also impedes application and regular use of the internet to ensure effective participation in this digital sphere. Our case study illustrated a distressing digital literacy gap amongst learners. So this was just one study that was commissioned here and carried out here in Eastern Cape that, as I said, found a myriad of challenges. Educators not trained, absence of computer labs, or where computer labs exist, theft, or where they exist, there's no Wi-Fi access. So even as we say we need to complement access to education with digital literacy, we are aware of these challenges. So our role is to monitor, as the Human Rights Commission, that the education landscape not only ensures access to education, but that it is quality education. We further note, the challenge, the challenge that is always there, the shrinking fiscus, budget cuts, that from the National Treasury, when you engage with the departments, in fact, about 3 days ago, we were in Parliament with the Department of Education, where we are pressing them on some issues. And this issue of budget cuts always comes up as an explanation. But colleagues, I deliberately started by quoting the section in the Bill of Rights, Section 29, the right to basic education. When you read that section, as well as jurisprudence from the Constitutional Court, it is very clear that this right to education cannot be limited. It doesn't have internal modifiers, such as the right to higher education or the right to freedom of expression, for example, or other rights like the right to access to shelter, which says within available resources. The right to basic education from the Constitutional Court jurisprudence, but also if you read opinions from the Committee on the Rights of Children, the United Nations Committee, budgetary constraints cannot be used as an excuse. So for us as a Human Rights Commission, we continue not only to press departments of education, but we are also engaged with National Treasury to say the right to basic education is a pathway ensuring social mobility, but for us as a Human Rights Commission also, without the right to education, there is no constitutional literacy. People cannot understand their rights. So the right to basic education, colleagues, in ensuring active citizens, citizens who understand their responsibilities, but also their rights, is very, very key. So the obligation on the state to furnish digital resources to learners is an intrinsic component of the right to education. Insufficient resources of this nature significantly undermine the right to education. Therefore, colleagues, despite such good policies, such as South Africa Connect or SA Connect, and also the universal service and access obligations, universal services and access obligation, which are mandated by the Independent Communications Authority. The case study here in the Eastern Cape underscore the need for quicker and concerted effort to address the pronounced digital divide prevalent in education. So let's be clear, colleagues, as I move to close. It is not merely about access to technology, it is about ensuring that each child, irrespective of their socio-economic background, has the tools and the skills to navigate the digital landscape. So, Acting Deputy Dean, let me conclude with some key recommendations from our side as the Human Rights Commission. Number one, first key recommendation, the need for infrastructural overhaul. The need to overhaul infrastructure. This involves, colleagues, prioritizing and expediting state-of-the-art computer laboratories, reliable Wi-Fi connections, and the necessary resources. So that's the first recommendation to deal with this digital divide, infrastructural overhaul. Secondly, there's a need to reform the curriculum. We must initiate comprehensive curricular reforms that not only integrates digital literacy as a distinct learning area, but also ensures a coordinated approach within disciplines such as computer science. This calls for a paradigm shift in how educators themselves impart skills so that every learner is adept at navigating the digital landscape. So that's the second clear recommendation that we're making, the need for curriculum reform. Thirdly, the third recommendation, professional development of educators. Professional development of educators. So recognizing that teachers and educators have a pivotal role to play in shaping digital literacy, we call for the establishment of robust training programs that empower teachers with the skills and knowledge required to navigate this digital literacy. I mean, you are sitting in a situation where some learners are more advanced than teachers in the use of digital media. So the power relations in the classroom is already a problem because these kids are so advanced. So we really need to empower our educators. Fourthly, community engagement. Community engagement. Nothing can happen without the community. There's a need to foster partnerships with local communities to overcome challenges that are very unique to each locality. So while we are making these overarching recommendations, we are also painfully aware that each community faces different challenges. So ours is not to parachute in and impose solutions, but we seek to partner with local communities, collaborating with local business, NGOs, ECDs, and so forth. Number 5, security measures. Security measures. As we implement this digital access, there is, of course, colleagues, the need for stringent security measures to safeguard these digital resources. We can't keep buying new computers and new resources. We can't keep doing that. So security becomes important. The local police forum, but also parents. What is their responsibility in ensuring that those computers and those labs are not stolen by local people, the local thugs, so to speak. Lastly, an equity-centric approach, We, of course, must encourage the crafting of policies and initiatives with an equity-centric lens, acknowledging and mitigating the existing disparities. So equity is not only about one size fits all. is about ensuring that you upskill those who are at the lower end. So, mindful of the existing disparities, an equity-centric approach becomes important so that we ensure that the benefits of digital literacy reach every child despite or besides their geographical location, social economic background, and so forth. So as we conclude, I started with a story of Middlesdrift, those kids who have to walk for an hour to access school. Simple thing like ensuring that at the local community hall, there is Wi-Fi access, there are computer screens, can significantly enhance access to education for those students so they don't have to walk miles and miles. Not only that, it will ensure that they are taught by the best teachers that are not at the local level, but that can be found globally. So, Acting Dean, our work extends beyond anecdotes as a Human Rights Commission. We are engaged in policy advocacy. We are engaged in monitoring different schools, but also we are engaged in conversations with the department, the National Department of Education, the Provincial Department of Education. Just yesterday, we also met with the Speaker of the Legislature to say, the Speaker, you need to hold the executive accountable on these issues. So, partnerships with universities, just like Forte University, where we know you've got students who are studying this, how can we partner together to ensure that our kids can compete in this digital age? I think with those short remarks, I will close Acting Dean. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Prof. In Xhosa, we say, "Mahle akafunu unxengwa," meaning we shouldn't be adding more to murky what has been said. But just to add, after thank you, Prof's lecture reminds me of what the former Deputy Chief Justice said to Musineke, that the state should be ensuring that education is accessible, and the state should not do anything that will stop education from being accessible. So we should also look at things like that where there is nothing that's stopped. Yes. So because Prof needs to leave, and we'll hand over to Dr. Carter as well, we'd like to give 3 questions quickly for Prof before he leaves. First 3.
So just to say that when I leave, Dr. Carter will sit you there, so you can also engage with
Just after the voice is audible, those who have put their hands up, just be on standby so we can identify.
Okay. Thank you for the questions quickly. Prof, I think I'll hand over to you to come.
Greetings to you, right? My first question would be that why did it take so long? Why did it take the COVID pandemic for the commission to actually start implementing this? Because from what I understand, apologies that I don't have the exact white paper, but there was a white paper, I think in 2004, that was signed for the Wi-Fi's to start actually implementing this, but then it was never done anything about. So why is it taking that COVID, actually this paper is actually starting to be implemented now, like 20 years later?
Can you please have the second question? Thank you for your question. It was over there and then over there. Can you please have the revolving mic? Can you please just stand so he can see you? Yeah, you're on the hot spot now, Prof. over there. Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you, thank you. Good evening to everyone here. Good evening, Professor. My question is around, you mentioned that you joined an MOU with UCT in 2021. The commission entered in an MOU with UCT. So my question is around that, what are the advantages or the changes have you seen so far in terms of the goals you mentioned that are part of the MOU? And shortly, my second question as well, which will not take much time. You mentioned that issues such as theft, vandalism, improper infrastructure, lack of access, and digital literacy. So my question around that is that the problem within the students themselves, as the students of substance abuse, for example, and maybe teenage pregnancy, would you classify those problems as part of your research that needs a solution as well? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. The last in pink at the back. Yes.
Greetings to everyone, and my question was kind of similar to the second speaker, but it was around the policies that you've spoken about. How have you tried to enforce them, and was there any evidence, have you seen any changes on what has been implemented? Is there any success? Is there any negatives that are still happening? Because I come from a school that had, from Soweto exactly, where there was a lot of stealing in computer labs. So what are the enforcements have you tried to look at? So that's it.
Okay, thank you. Over to you, Prof.
Thank you for those questions. The first question about why did we wait for COVID to spur us on? You know, the way we work is we work in three ways to kickstart processes. One is when we receive a complaint from a member of the public to say, my right to education has been violated because of this. Then we act. But we also act where, on our own accord, where we do our own investigation, where we observe that, you know, a right is potentially being violated. In this case, you are quite right that you quote that white paper. We did engage with the Department of, what is it called, Innovation and Digital Technologies. That was before the pandemic. But nothing was implemented, right? So that's why we said, let's conduct a study where we'll have data and clear statistics of the nature of the problem, how widespread is it, so that when we hold the state accountable, we can have clear data. So that's what we did, you know. So that's how we act. We first engage with the relevant authorities. Sometimes they tell us the tools, sometimes they don't. And there's a need for us to do further studies. And that's the benefit of the commission, that unlike an NGO, we can have the power to summon this department to say, come to us and account on what you did. So you're quite right, we need to be more proactive and not wait for such a long time to happen. But yeah, that's what we did. We engaged with the department. They said things were happening, they were not happening, and we carried out the study in 2023. The second question was about the improvements with those learners who were part of the UCT online schools. I'll have to follow up with my colleagues in KwaZulu-Natal. I don't want to say that I know 14 learners were part of this. I know when the study was conducted, they did have access to education. But in terms of what happened afterwards, I'll really need to follow up on that. So I won't like to, to tell you what is not true. The right to access to education is also impinged by societal ills and societal factors like drug abuse, like teenage pregnancy, which is rape essentially, and so forth. So part of the solution is to come up with holistic solutions. So for example, now on Friday, we'll be going to Mpumalanga, where we're engaged on a project on Ukuthwala and the issues to do with Ukuthwala. So you're quite right, it's not enough to give computer labs, ensure access to education, while the community itself is disintegrating. We need holistic solutions. But as I end where I started to say, partnerships become very, very important. Partnerships with universities, partnerships with students' bodies, partnership with local big business or business, partnerships with local NGOs, so that when we suggest solutions, we make sure that there are holistic solutions which will actually, create active citizens. So as I said, there was a mishap with the booking, and my flight is now, but Dr. Carter is still here to engage with you further, which is even better than having me, because she's a provincial manager and can speak specifically to some of the issues in the province. But I hope, Acting Dean, you'll invite me back. There's a lot of things that I need to engage with the university on. I hope we'll send an MOU with the center, Professor Poko's center, so that we can work together. Thank you so much, colleagues.
Okay, this is better. Thank you so much, Prof. I think on behalf of the Commission in the province as well, we wish you a safe flight, a flight on time, and we will definitely have him back to engage with the students as well. Much has been said, and I want to not keep you here unnecessarily, but maybe just a few concluding thoughts from my side. Digital literacy for us as the Commission is such an important issue, but it is also an ancillary issue. People always ask us exactly the question that is coming from you guys, is to say, but we are still grappling with teenage pregnancies. We are grappling with malnutrition on the ground. LTSM material is not delivered. So how do we then look at technology perhaps as a baseline concern? And I think ours would be to say two things can be true at the same time. We must also look at moving forward whilst we're addressing the baseline issues as we move. Because we certainly don't want our children and our young people to be left behind again. Because we failed to learn a language that the rest of the country or the rest of society is little by little and bit by bit learning to speak. So years and years and years ago, they said that there was a high priest that was the only person that was literate and the only person who was able to read. And that person decided who gained access to knowledge and literacy. And we should be very, very aware that that access to literacy is not only reserved to those who occupy the spaces in the global north. We should be very aware not only to import policies and knowledge from the global north, but to produce it from the global majority where we are. Not from South Africa, not from the city centers in Gauteng, but from East London. And I invite you to start having this conversation with us. Digital literacy is not a faraway concept. It is here with us now, and we need to enable ourselves to start speaking this language. And as the Prof has indicated, there are certain steps and recommendations that the Human Rights Commission in this respect are making. And we will be following up. We have asked for the data in terms of rollout of public Wi-Fi spots, Because as Prof has indicated, why do we need to walk 11 kilometers to school while we can have learners in their local communities have access to the best resources, not only countrywide, but perhaps globally? And when we equip these learners, not only with coding, but because we've seen in respect of digital literacy and the movement of AI and machine learning, that even that may now become obsolete. And that we then move with the times and we take the hands of our children and we don't make the knowledge that they are gaining every day obsolete. We equip them. We send them out into society, making them ready for this fourth industrial revolution. But from the Human Rights Commission side, we can't do it alone. We've indicated we need to take the hands of the community. We need to take your hands. We need to innovate. And that, fortunately, is where we are taking the hands of a university. University is a center of research and innovation. And we're very excited about the journey we can embark upon. Because digital literacy is not only what we are being provided with, it's also how do we equip ourselves. And in that respect, I want to invite you to engage with the South African Human Rights Commission's Social Media Charter. The Social Media Charter is a blueprint on how we become responsible digital citizens. So not only asking for knowledge outside of ourselves, but also equipping ourselves. What is disinformation? What should we be embarking on when we spread information on WhatsApp? Are we responsible in assessing if the information we have access to is true and correct? Machine learning, AI, deep fakes. What do we do about them, or do we push the forward button or the like button or the share button when we are engaging online? So we invite you to engage with us on the Social Media Charter. It is available on our website. And let us ourselves become literate on this language. Especially with the elections around the corner, we need to equip ourselves when there's a lot of hate speech and harassment also taking place online. I think from my side, Zuki, I'm not sure whether there's any further questions, perhaps even to your members here from the university, but I think I leave you with a message that as the Human Rights Commission, we are your partners. We are your partners in realizing rights that are with us now, but we are also your partners in the developing nature of human rights as we know it, as we look forward to the role that technology plays in all of this. So from my side, thank you so much.
Thank you, Doc. I want to ask before we go to closure if there's maybe two more questions, perhaps. There's one question over there. There's a second question. And there's a third question, and that's it for now. Could you please start here, and Dr. Carter will respond.
Greetings to everyone. My name is Anand Neti. I just have one question to ask. Based on the fourth industrial revolution that you want to implement it in terms of the education setting, digital learning, have you considered that learners who have a special care in terms of education, also learners who are living with disability, how does that fourth industrial revolution will accommodate them in terms of learning mechanism? Thank you so much.
Thank you for that question. Over here in front.
Good afternoon, Doc, and to everyone in the house. I just have one question. First of all, the Section 29 of the Constitution states that everyone has a right to education, including adult basic learning. I want to ask you now, is the adult basic learning accommodated like those old people who are able? Are they also accommodated through digital learning?
Thank you for that question. Third one.
Good morning, everyone. My question is with regards to the implementation part, because from the presentation, I heard that there is a lot that still need to be done. For instance, there was the issue of electricity, the load shedding, there was the issue of lack of infrastructure, the issue of training, the educators, the issue of security in terms of guarding the infrastructure. So my question now is, because it seems that there needs to be a lot of stakeholders coming together. For instance, when you talk about security, there's a role of the SAPS, electricity, that's ESCOM, and training the educators, that's education. So if now these stakeholders come together and commit to achieve this goal, are there any measures in place where you hold them accountable for their commitment, for instance, where they don't deliver?
Thank you for those questions. It's okay. I hope it doesn't. Okay.
Thank you so much again for the questions. I think this conversation is so rich, and I wish we had more time so that we can really unpack every single aspect. I want to touch on the right of people with disabilities to have access to education. Not only that, the right of people with disabilities to be treated equally and enjoy their rights equally. That is extremely important. Assistive devices, even engaging online, is extremely important for us as well. And there are several assistive devices that one can be implementing and employing when we support this right for special needs learners as well. But just to give you an indication, and also an update, because we're very excited about it, even this morning we met with the mayor of Buffalo City to speak about the rights of people with disabilities and how accessibility is so important for the Human Rights Commission. We also have a unit at our head office speaking directly to this. So absolutely, when we speak about rights, it has to be inclusive, and that includes digital literacy. What are we doing? You know, it's a big picture conversation that we need to have. And after that, I'll probably give over to the university to comment on the old people comment, ne? Because it's a discussion that we need to have. And my colleagues, again, I'm going to refer to that analogy I always make about the elephant. How do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time. We have to take one step at a time, one event at a time, one conversation at a time to realize this right. But it cannot be realized without advocacy. And that's why we need to take the hands of the students in this room, the hands of the communities, the hands of Fort Hare to say, let us popularize this conversation, because indeed a lot needs to be done. But as oversight, the Human Rights Commission also has a duty to report back to Parliament. We've got a duty to hold those accountable when realization is not happening as per the commitment that the Bill of Rights calls upon us. So it is ours to oversee and monitor this realization, which we are in the process of doing. But we can all play a role in respect of the advocacy of this matter as well, whilst step by step we take one bite out of this elephant.
Right, thank you so much, Dr. Carter. Before I give over to Prof. Power, the chair, I think what is important is to come up with a holistic approach to all these issues, because without that, it's going to be very difficult to be in a space wherein we realize any right beside even education, because I sit here thinking at some point we need to call the MEC for safety, the MEC for basic education, the MEC for this, all of them, including the parents. You know, let's have honest conversation. Seppo said earlier that sometimes the government says the truth, sometimes they don't say the truth. Hence the need for us to be proactive to get the data from the ground as to what is happening. You can have a policy, but the policy is not being implemented. What do you do about it? And I think that's where the Commission needs to work with the communities and all of us to ensure that whether it's a child who's got disability, what the psychosocial challenges and whatnot, they are included, because the right to basic education is not only for us and exclusive of others, but it's for everyone inclusive. And I want to say that I'm hoping that education students are here, because last year I was invited to their closing function and I addressed some of these issues. So I said that we are working in silos. I mean, we do have a law faculty here. We teach all these laws, the interpretation of laws, the protection of human rights. We do have a center. But then we've got a faculty that implements some of these, because teachers are the ones that have to be equipped. I mean, so if you do have a girlfriend or a boyfriend who's a teacher who's doing that qualification, you need to empower them, to have this conversation with them, because then they will take that even to their practice, to school experience, etc. Because without those discussions and conversations, we might still have challenges, honestly speaking, because teachers are not equipped enough. There is a lot of problems in terms of curriculum. I've got 3 brothers, they are teachers. Sometimes they ask me very basic stuff, but they're young. And then, you can't be having challenges just to implement a very basic technological, teaching divide. So there is an issue there that we need to address, a holistic approach, especially because of transformative constitutionalism. We mustn't wait for Parliament and for this one and for that one, but all of us do have a, sort of a role to play, even at home. I mean, earlier we were also told that learners know more than teachers or their parents. So we, the young generation, what role do we play? Do we laugh at mom when she doesn't know how to use WhatsApp to communicate with the teacher? Or do we laugh at the teacher not knowing how to use PowerPoint? No, we need to be proactive. No, teacher can help you. I know this, I've seen it, or I know how it works. Then that way we can equip each other. I think we need that kind of approach. Prof?
Thank you very much, Dr. Ndlovu. Dr. Carter, let me first confess that this is my 4th day at work. But that doesn't prevent me to answer questions. I think from the floor, I was struck by 2 questions. The one relates to the inclusion of digital literacy for learners with special needs. And the second one related to the, professional development of teachers so as to realize the right to basic education. Those 2 questions are very important. One, because, they do not have direct answers. So in order to answer them, those 2 students who have asked those questions must register for Masters and PhD so that we can engage in an ongoing research to find sustainable solutions. Remember, as universities, we are the source of knowledge production. But they are important because this also speaks to the aspect of socio-economic rights. As we now, the shift, or rather the focus, is on digital literacy. How do we balance various competing interests, including access to education, continuous development of teachers so that they are not left behind in this evolving technological era? How do we also empower those who are unable to access school, maybe because they have to cross rivers and so on? This is an ongoing project that requires, concerted efforts from all stakeholders. Without conducting my own PhD, I will leave it there. There are no answers at this moment. Thank you very much. But we have started on the right note.
Thank you. I think before we hand over to closure, there was a very important question on implementation. I don't know if it was touched on.
Implementation of?
Yes, how will we show implementation of all these?
Well, I think it was touched on by Prof.
Yes, I think I went to the implementation aspect. Remember these rights, especially when you're talking about primary education. They depend on the availability of state resources. In other words, they are achieved on progressive basis. But that progressive condition doesn't mean that the government should sit back. In other words, they must work towards a plan to ensure that they meet their targets on an ongoing basis. You have actually brought me to another point. I came across with the documents in the center that speaks to the issue of, it's an ongoing research by one of our colleagues, Dr. Fobosi. It speaks on the issue of primary education, digital literacy, transport and security. So that's where we can also strengthen our collaborations to see how do we find answers so that next time when we produce recommended solutions, they speak to these issues that have been raised here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. I think that covers it. Zukiswa, over to you.
Before we hand over for closure to Prof. Paul, thank you to first everyone who is here in front who has made time and engaged. Thank you to the staff who is also here supporting. We're forever grateful to the university and our support assistants there at the back, our colleagues, and for me most especially to you, who I know will go out now and won't forget this, right? And who will go and speak with their families. My mom knows ChatGPT, guys. I teach my mom everything. So this is what we can do in our communities. It starts with us. We are the ones who are available to do this and to empower. Prof, yes, I'm asking you to please to come and give our thanks, and we'll have refreshments. Thank you.
Madam Program Director, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I won't need the podium to stand on. Professor Tsepo Madlingozi in absentia, Dr. Carter, Madam Program Director, and the entire members of your office. It is a great honor to having visited the Faculty of Law at the University of Fort Hare and engaged with this crop of microwave generation students. I have no doubt that they have listened to the message and they are quite aware that this is the beginning, but not the end. We are looking forward to work with you as an institution in the province. I think this lecture came at the right time because lecturers bear the ultimate responsibility of both empowering and educating their communities upon completion. On behalf of the management of the Faculty of Law, we thank you for availing yourself. We are aware that your mandate is broader than this room. Without further ado, I understand that I'm now the barrier between lunch and people. So I will pause there. I thank you.
Oh, thank you guys. I don't know how the food thing is going to happen. The food is going to be a struggle.